So our presenters tonight, our first presenter is Jerry Inkle. As you can see Jerry there. Jerry, well, for a short time still, I believe, is the North California Regional Coordinator, but he, exiting out of that role, and I think heading off on a vacation right after this, so a very smart guy. And then also we have Danny Richter, our Legislative and Science Director for Citizens Climate Lobby. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jerry to get us started for this evening.
Great. Thanks, Ricky, and thanks to everybody for joining us tonight. It sure has been a fascinating process for me, and I hope you find it interesting as well. So we're going over a working paper that provides estimates of the net financial impact by household of something very similar to our policy. And it shows sort of who wins and who loses and by how much. So interesting information. A couple quick disclaimers. So as Mark says, this is not a homework project. You don't have to do anything with this. If you look at the information, we'll go over it for the country tonight. You'll then receive information for your district or state, whatever area that you're working on. And if it will facilitate the relationship and help us meet our objectives, great. If not, this is not information you have to use. Also, with these new estimates, we believe they're refined. They're a step up from what we've shown in the past. We may, over time, update information on the web about some of these topics. Okay? That's it. What are we going to do tonight? Want to talk about why this is important, briefly about the process that Kevin went through to produce the estimates. What did we find out about what the key drivers of the carbon footprint is? Because you're going to pay a fee based on the footprint. You're going to receive a dividend irrespective of it. And so the winners and losers are going to be driven by how big your footprint is, right? That's exactly the design of the policy. We'll go over the national results, as I said, and then we'll look at caveats, things to keep in mind as we're going through this paper. Let's see. Why is this important? Consider that our policy will generate will yield change for everybody. This is going to hit people's pocketbooks in some way or another. Change, people are a little loath, don't necessarily like that, and it's uncertain change. We don't know how things are going to go. So that people can get their guard up over this. The intent of this study is to provide some estimates, diminish that uncertainty, provide some very useful estimates as to how people will be impacted and by how much. So we're going to shed some light on this. We found it very useful with REMI. Prior to REMI, you would hear from those that maybe wanted to oppose this type of policy, it's a job killer. We came out with REMI. No, not so much. Where we could provide certainty, it was very useful. Same here. Is this just an energy tax? No, we can look very specifically as to how people do and why. Okay. So, first of all, just a little background on our proposal that is being evaluated here. Most of you know this, but some of you don't, so I'll go through it for those. Very basic. Polluting shouldn't be free. You put a fee on carbon pollution and greenhouse gas pollution at the source. You return all the money to households equally. In order to incent good behavior internationally, there's a border tax adjustment such that if you've produced something in the U.S. and you've paid this fee, but you want to export it to ensure your competitiveness is not diminished, we give you the fee back if you're exporting to countries that don't have a similar fee. Likewise, if money is, or if goods are coming into the country that have not had this fee and they want to compete here, we're going to attach that fee at the border. That's our border tax adjustment, which is very important to incenting folks to play with us, to enact a carbon tax of their own. Okay, a little bit about the process that Kevin went through. First of all, you need to derive a fee based on the carbon footprint for each of the households. So the first estimate is to understand expenditures. What are people spending their money on? And he derived from a couple of public surveys 52 expenditure categories. He combined that with information on what the carbon intensity is of those different types of expenditures. Put those two together, and you can derive, based upon what we consume, which is consistent with our policy, what someone's greenhouse gas footprint would be. In this instance, it's what the fee would be by household based on a $15 a ton tax. He can't do this over time. He doesn't wrap it up. It's a one-time $15 a ton tax. Then the dividend, really pretty straightforward. It's the CCL policy, 1 share per adult, half a share per child up to 2. Two key differences, we'll call it 3, with respect to what Kevin did, what he analyzed in our policy. First of all, he did CO2 only. Our policy includes all greenhouse gas emissions. CO2 in the U.S. is about 85% of total greenhouse gas. So this is going to be a very good approximation. Second of all, if we send fossil fuels overseas, if we export them, he is giving back the fee at the border and adding it to the federal coffers. We actually don't do that in our policy. Should not be a major difference, but he's going to give the federal government a little bit more money than what we would do. And do note, it's worth noting, on the dividend, it's fully taxable at federal marginal tax rates. So federal income taxes do apply. With this process, he was able to derive estimates of the net cost or benefit to 5.8 million households. That's about 5%. That's a very nice sample. And from that, you're able to extrapolate to the country as a whole. Let's see. So, what are the key drivers to how big your footprint is? In other words, whether you incur a cost or receive a benefit from this policy is going to be a function of your footprint, because the dividend is going to stay about the same. Factor number one, probably far and away the biggest, is income. You make a lot, you buy more stuff, and that's part of your footprint. Rough estimate, 60% of the average footprint comes from indirect expenditures. So 40% on direct expenditures on energy, so gasoline, electric power, this kind of thing. Those are direct, and that's only 40%. Indirect, the stuff that you buy, is 60%, makes up the majority of it. So the more money you make, the more stuff you buy, the bigger your footprint. And it's a very important factor here. 2, housing inefficiency. So if you've got a real big house, or there's very few people that live in the house, that's somewhat inefficient. Larger footprint, you're going to heat or cool the thing, right? Transportation inefficiency. If you're out in the suburbs and you're driving everywhere, higher footprint. If you're in the inner city, you don't drive far, or you're reliant on public transportation, you're much more transportation efficient, you're going to do better. So for both housing and transportation efficiencies, how it turns out is that the suburbs don't do as well, the inner city does better. So the suburbs are going to have a higher cost. And that shouldn't be too surprising. Other important factors, if you live in an area of a mild climate, you're going to have a lower footprint also. The carbon intensity of your electricity supply is going to be important. We'll see a map on that in a minute. So what I like to call pretty picture number one. This is a picture, a pictorial of net beneficiaries, and those are in blue. The darker the blue, the more you benefit, versus net cost, people that incur a cost, and that's in brown or red. And then the white are the people that are kind of in the middle. They by and large break even. So we could all probably stare at this for a long time. We're not going to do that. But this is the picture for the country. And what you see, the South, maybe those are slightly milder climates. They're less, the folks, a little bit surprising, but some of the folks, North Dakota, South Dakota, and the area in and around there are, incur a cost in general. You'll also see that if you look closely at the important urban centers, there may be, for example, the San Francisco Bay Area, the East Coast, the major cities in the East Coast. There's urban, there's suburban there as well, but they have money. And so their footprint is probably a bit higher because of that. Let's see. I wanted to show you, we believe that this work has stood on the shoulders of the work done in the past and improved upon it. These are more refined estimates, and I want to give you just a couple of examples of that before going to the results. Okay. Kevin has been able to understand spatial variation. So in the past, often with these estimates, a kilowatt is a kilowatt, and the footprint that stems from that kilowatt is the same. Kevin has used data that depicts the carbon intensity of electricity, and you see it here. The red is very carbon intensive. The blue are areas where it's just a cleaner energy source or less so. And you're going to have, so in the estimates, he can embed the fact that a unit of energy provides a smaller footprint in the blue areas than in the red areas, improving the estimates. Also, and again, I don't have time for detail on this. The paper's available. The FAQs are fabulous. Thank you, Danny. It really will provide you more information on this. I'll go over it briefly. But he was also able to show that you will pay a different amount for the same product in two different areas of the country. His example was New York City, 2-liter bottle of Coke is $2. In Omaha, it's $1.33. Okay, so this is going to impact your expenditures and the footprint corresponding to those expenditures. That's called the Manhattan effect. You'll see that in these major urban areas, the cities with money, you're spending more for the exact same thing. This particular graph is on services price index. You just pay more for it in the big cities. He takes that into account. That's called the Manhattan effect. The Gucci effect is, two households can buy a pair of shoes. One can pay hundreds of dollars for them. Another household will commonly pay substantially less. That is considered, and that's new. That really speaks to improved analysis. So let's get to the show. These are the results. The next 8 charts and graphs are going to be the information that you are provided that you may use for your meetings with members of Congress, and you may use to get a real sense of the impact of this policy on your own district or state. Okay, this is a bar chart, and it pertains to the beneficiaries broken up by income group, by quintile. So you've got the 5 quintiles there. So I'm showing you these for 2 reasons. One, I want to show you the national results. I want to show you how the country fares under this policy. 2, I want to help you understand, explain to you, how do you interpret the data on these graphs. Okay? So here's bar chart number 1. Oops, I can use my fancy laser pointer here. Let's go to the all households. So primary fundamental result. 54% of households are net beneficiaries of this. Okay. It also turns out that 59%, nearly 60% of individuals come out ahead, and the remainder come out behind and incur a cost. That's a little bit less than what we've seen in the past. Okay, that's a little less than prior estimates that we have shown. Don't be alarmed, stick with me on this. Let's go now to quintile 1 here. This is the poorest, if you will. This is an important result. Of quintile 1, of the poorest 20% of households in the country, a full 87% are beneficiaries. Okay? And you can see visually, and the visuals are important here, you can see as you move your eyes to the right that as income increases, the wealthier the household, the fewer number of households, or the smaller proportion of households are beneficiaries. So potentially this is a good thing. The poor are less able, more vulnerable, less able to afford a cost here, and they gain. Now I want to go down to the first data point just below this, the 305. This is the mean net benefit as a percent and as a percentage of income. So what this says is within this group, the first quintile, it's going to be about 23 million households, 1/5 of the U.S. population. The average gain is $305 a year. Not bad. And as a percentage of their income, it's almost 2% of their income. Okay? And to get a sense of how important that is to them, you can go down to the bottom data point here. This is the median household income as a percent of the federal poverty line. Okay, so these folks on average, or the median, I should say, the typical household, the income is below the federal poverty line. Federal poverty line, $24,300 for a family of 4, $11,880 for a family of 1. So, and all of that is in your definitions takeaway that Ricky had alluded to. So the definitions will make clear what these figures mean. But this is good news. These are people that need the money. They benefit. Now let's go over to quintile 5 and look at the result, and you see very much the opposite story. Their average benefit loss is a loss of $332. However, note that it's only 0.2% of their income. So these folks lose what quintile 1 gains, but it doesn't mean nearly as much to them, right? It's hardly noticeable for them. And that's indicated as well as you go down to their median household income as a percent of the federal poverty line. The median typical income of these folks is they're making 8 times the federal poverty line, whereas these folks are making less than the federal poverty line. Want to point out one other thing. The median gain and loss, I'm not going to talk much about here. Again, it's in that definitions page. As you grow used to these and get comfortable with them, you can derive the meaning of those. But I did want to point out one thing. The fact of the matter is, though most of the poorest gain, some lose. Okay, and their loss, so that's 13% of this bracket, and the median loss is $93 a year, which ends up being 0.65% of their income. So it's not something we're going to ignore. In a policy in which you charge everybody to pollute, which we need to do, and hand all the money back, you're going to find some of the poorest folks that have significant, they have higher than average carbon footprints. Okay, so the bar chart I just showed you, you're going to get 4 of those on different sectors, different cuts of the national population. You're also going to get 4 of these, what we call violin charts. It's a little more sophisticated, and the truth is it's got more information. What you'll do is see which you're more comfortable with. Is it the bar chart or is it the violins? And if you're more comfortable with the bar chart, that's what you're bringing into the MOC. It's what you can talk to comfortably. Okay. Having said that, here's the violin chart with essentially the exact same information that I just showed you. Breaks down the population by income quintile. It's got the 5 quintiles. And let me just, so all the data across the bottom is the same. Let me just tell you what I find interesting about this. It doesn't just show you a bar of this percentage gain versus the percentage that loses. It also shows you the entire distribution. And one of the things that I think is valuable of that is you get a better sense of the folks that do lose. That's everybody below this 0%. Okay? And you can see that it's not an insignificant amount, but one nice thing, I think, my interpretation, is that it doesn't get too bad. It's sort of it doesn't get a whole lot worse than 2% of their income. This y-axis is the percentage of their income. So most of the folks that lose, it's 1% of their income or less. You've only got a handful that really are disadvantaged by this. And we'll talk about what we might be able to do. Now you'll notice that these get real flat, and what's going on here is that income is rising, right, as you go to the right, as the quintiles get bigger. And this is this is gain or loss relative to the household's income. So the denominator is getting really big here. So the net gain or loss tends to stay fixed. It's about your footprint, doesn't go up that much, and yet the denominator's getting much bigger here, so these things flatten out. But you also get a sense from looking at quintile 5, I do anyway, it doesn't get too bad for these folks. As a percentage of their income, doesn't get too bad. All right, I said 4 cuts at the national pie. Here's our second one, and from here I'm just going to go over the bar charts and leave the rest to you. We look at age groups, and once again, I believe the story is favorable. The groups that may be most vulnerable are the young and the old. The young, just starting out, they get a nice benefit. The oldest, they also tend to get a nice benefit. The young, it's because their income may not be as high, the families are just starting out, and the kids are in the household, so they may have larger families there. We believe that's why they do well. The old, smaller footprint because they're less mobile, and income may be low as well. And you can see here, income appears low. Those are the 2 groups in which income is the lowest. And then these folks do not do as well. Who sort of gets hurt age-wise? It tends to be these folks where the kids are gone, your career's matured, you're making a little bit more money. DINK is what we used to call them, right? But that's not quite it, right? Double income, no kids. But this is, you may have kids, but they're not in the household anymore. So there's the violins on that. Third cut. We're looking at particular households that MOCs said that they might be concerned about. They wanted to know about this. And we see that, again, these are the most vulnerable, and they do pretty well. Again, it's a good story. The elderly. This is head of household is 65 or older. Family of 4, usually young families, but the kids are still in the home. Low income. This is 2 times the federal poverty limit or below. Nice gain. We saw that below. We saw that before in different forms. Poverty here is income at or below the federal poverty line. So they're even more impoverished, and they do even better, and that's a good thing. So only 10% of the folks below the federal poverty line lose out, and their median loss is $88. Minorities, we'll look more at that in a minute, and they do well, and then single parents do well as well. So I think, look at the data. You'll have your data for your own district or state. This is, I believe, a comforting story. Consider that those most vulnerable are actually going to have a gain as a result of this policy. Again, violins, take a look at them. Ethnic groups, focus on a couple. Ethnic groups generally do well. Let me go to my notes here. First of all, they tend to have less income. Second of all, they tend to live in more dense housing, more people per household. And at least for the Latino population, they tend to live in milder climates. So they do well. Let's see. Rolling through this now, which is good, because time is of the essence. Final cut. Nope, that was the final cut. Okay. I'm going to pause. Okay, good. I'm doing better than I thought. Key takeaways. Here's what I'm hoping you're seeing after I've read the thing 4 times. I think Danny and I concur on this. The first of all, and maybe most important point that we see from the analysis, the most vulnerable generally do well. Second, there are instances in which they do not. That 13% of the lowest quintile, that 10% of the impoverished, it will be important. It probably won't be a part of our policy, but there are ways to address this, and we need to be aware of that. Getting information to those people that are most vulnerable to let them know how you can reduce your carbon footprint. We're going to charge people to pollute. It's what we've got to do. And here's how you can mitigate your footprint, lessen your footprint so that you can do better on this. Third, those that generally are disadvantaged are the folks that can most afford it. That's reassuring. And 4, it's important to note my good friend Rob Beggs, who is the chair of our conservative caucus, would say, don't talk about this as something that redistributes income. The intent here is not to redistribute income from rich to poor. It's not a Robin Hood scheme. What it is, as George Schultz says, is you're correcting the free market. You're improving the free market. You're simply charging the full cost of the product. You're charging for pollution like everybody knows you should. Okay. Final point here. Always keep in mind, all we've done here is shift money around. We made polluting more expensive. We gave all the money back. This analysis does not consider or include the tremendous health, climate, and general environmental benefits that will come from a policy such as this that will significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And if this policy can incent or inspire other key emitting countries to act, okay, this can dramatically reduce climate risk, and that's tremendously valuable. So not only does it have a nice story to tell, not only are the most vulnerable doing pretty well, those that don't do, that are disadvantaged by it have the means to afford it. Again, that Q5 is at 800% of the federal poverty line in terms of income. But we reap all these health and environmental benefits as well. As I like to say, picture what occurred in Paris. had the U.S. pass strong legislation, had the U.S. Congress pass strong legislation, would have been a completely different outcome. That is the level of environmental benefit that we can achieve with a policy like that. That's something we've got to keep in mind. Okay, I'm just going to touch on the methodology here and get to questions. Expenditure estimate for 5.8 million households came from a couple of public surveys from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Consumer Expenditure Survey from 2008 to 2012. From the Census Bureau, the American Community Survey was integrated with the other to provide those estimates. You've got the greenhouse gas estimate, intensity estimate. Much of that data, again, you'll see it in the FAQs. You'll see it in the paper if you go that far. A lot of it came from the Energy EIA, the Energy, from that subgroup in the EPA. Sorry, it's EIA, I think. Government and taxation, just a note. The CBO will score this as they do. We believe that they will score it as revenue neutral because the dividend is taxable. That's basically been their guidance in the past. In this particular, with this set of assumptions, in this particular simulation, government expenses rose by $18.1 billion, right? They're paying higher costs too. That's federal, state, and local. Costs up $18.1 billion. Taxing the dividend brought back $17 billion. There's a slight government deficit here, just FYI. Again, what's important is how the CBO scores it, and we're not there yet. Border tax adjustment, he has essentially accommodated, except for the exception that I gave you. He's reflected our policy on the border tax adjustment. And the exception that I gave you was that we don't give the money back. If someone exports fossil fuels, we don't return the tax at the border before they're exported. We keep it. His assumption was that the money's returned. Caveats, and then we'll go to questions. Just real quick, a couple of things to understand. This is static, point in time. It's a snapshot, as they say. As a result, consumers don't have an opportunity to react to the price changes. Obviously, our hope is that they will. Businesses don't have a chance to react to them. So, yeah, that's worth noting. Also, there's no impact here to gross domestic product or employment. Again, it's not dynamic. You see. I wanted to make one other point. One other caveat. This is a working paper. It has not been peer-reviewed yet. We feel very good about it. Kevin's done brilliant work, and that's the status of this. It's a working paper. Working papers are quoted all the time. Doesn't mean, don't share the results. Absolutely do, and that is the status of this particular analysis.